Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
Ever think about what happens in your gut after you, say, drink a glass of milk?
Yeah, it's actually pretty wild.
Like a huge party going on down there, right?
More like a whole ecosystem, trillions of microorganisms all reacting to what we consume.
That's what we're diving into today, folks. The complex relationship between different types of dairy and our gut microbiota.
The bacteria, fungi, even viruses, all hanging out in our intestines.
We've got a stack of research papers and some health news articles, and we're going to unpack it all for you.
Should be fascinating.
Absolutely. So when we say gut microbiota, we're talking about that massive community of microorganisms living in our guts.
Right, and this community plays a really big role in our overall health.
Huge. Digestion, immune system, even our mood.
It's mind-blowing how much research is coming out about its influence.
For this deep dive, we're zeroing in on scientific papers that have actually studied how different types of dairy interact with these gut microbes.
It's cutting-edge stuff, but we'll break it down so everyone can understand.
Exactly. So you've got different components in milk, right? Proteins, fats, carbs. And some of these, like the proteins beta-casein, A1 and A2, can interact with our gut microbiota in different ways.
It's more complex than just milk is milk, you know.
Our goal today is to take all these sources and give you a clear picture of what the science says about dairy and gut health.
Without getting too lost in the technical weeds.
Right. Let's jump into our first study.
Okay, so this first paper is titled Comparison of the Quality of Yogurt Produced from Milk Containing A1 and A2 Beta-casein.
Yogurt.
Now, it mainly focuses on the yogurt itself, but the background and some of the findings are relevant to our gut discussion.
Okay, so for our listeners who aren't familiar, there's been a lot of talk about A1 versus A2 milk.
Yeah, especially about how they might be digested differently.
Some research suggests that A1 milk could lead to the production of something called beta-casein 7.
BCM7 for short.
BCM7.
And this BCM7, well, it's a peptide, basically a small protein fragment that's released when we digest milk.
Particularly A1 milk, right?
That's the idea.
And some studies have linked BCM7 to, like, digestive issues.
Yeah, some people seem more sensitive to it than others.
So this study, even though it's about yogurt, gives us some clues about these potential differences.
Right. So they made yogurt from both A1 and A2 milk and analyzed the final products.
They looked at, like, the chemical composition, acidity,
Antioxidant capacity.
texture, even how it tasted.
Trying to see if the type of milk really changed the final yogurt that, ends up interacting with our gut bacteria.
And what did they find?
This is interesting. They concluded that the A1 or A2 type of beta-casein didn't have a huge impact on any of those qualities.
So A1 yogurt and A2 yogurt, pretty similar.
Pretty much, at least in terms of those basic characteristics.
But here's the thing. Even though the yogurts were similar, the potential for different amounts of BCM7 to be released during digestion is still a factor.
Exactly. That's where the gut health implications come in.
Because even if the yogurt itself is similar, what happens in our gut might be different depending on whether it started as A1 or A2 milk.
And that's the point raised in other research, too. Let's move on to a news article we found. It's titled, Is the A1, A2 milk debate all about marketing or all about science?
Catchy title.
It dives into the science behind this A1, A2 distinction and all the health claims you hear.
Okay, so what's the article saying about this whole A1, A2 thing?
Well, it explains that it boils down to a single genetic difference in the beta-casein protein.
Right, we touched on that.
The main claim is that A1 milk releases more of that BCM7 during digestion.
Right, that peptide.
But the article makes a really important point. Both A1 and A2 milk release BCM7.
Wait, both?
Yep. The amount can vary depending on the person's digestion and health conditions, though.
Ah, okay.
So it's not as simple as saying A1 is bad and A2 is good.
Right, it's more nuanced than that.
Exactly. There was even a study in 2024 by Choi and his colleagues where some people reported tummy troubles after A1 milk, but the differences between A1 and A2 in relieving those symptoms weren't actually that significant.
So maybe not as big of a deal as some people make it out to be.
That's what the article is suggesting. And if the digestive effects aren't drastically different, it raises questions about the impact on the balance of our gut microbes, too.
Makes sense.
And there's another crucial point. The article reminds us that both A1 and A2 milk have saturated fats.
Oh yeah, heart health.
Right. So maybe we should focus on the overall impact of dairy on our health, not just this one protein difference.
Nice to think.
Now let's switch gears to a different study. This one is titled, Effect of Beta-casein A2 Cow Milk Supplementation on Physical Growth, Inflammation, Growth, and Metabolism Hormonal Profiles in Stunted Children.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long one, but this study looked at the effects of A2 milk on young children with stunted growth.
Okay, interesting.
They were specifically looking at things like weight, height, inflammation markers, and levels of growth hormones.
So they gave these kids A2 milk and tracked what happened.
Right, they gave them 200 milliliters every day for 3 months.
And measured all those things before, during, and after.
Exactly. It was what we call a quasi-experimental study, meaning they didn't have a separate control group.
Okay, I'm following. So what did they find?
They found that the children's weight and height significantly improved over the 3 months.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
And their inflammation markers, things like tumor necrosis factor alpha and cortisol, also decreased significantly.
That's great news.
Yeah, and their growth hormone levels, things like insulin-like growth factor 1, transferrin, and growth hormone itself, all went up significantly too.
So A2 milk seemed to have a positive effect on these kids.
That's what the study suggests. The researchers believe that beta-casein A2 milk might be helpful for addressing stunting, especially in areas where it's common.
And they connect it back to that BCM7 thing, right?
Exactly. They suggest that A2 milk with potentially lower BCM7 production might be linked to these positive effects, even hinting at a reduced risk of certain diseases.
Interesting. But this study didn't look at gut microbiota directly, did it?
It didn't, but we can still draw some connections. The fact that inflammation decreased and metabolic hormones changed could mean there were positive shifts in the gut environment.
It all ties together.
It does. Now, of course, every study has limitations.
Right. We always got to remember that.
In this case, because it wasn't a randomized controlled trial with a separate control group, it's harder to say for sure that the A2 milk was the only reason for these improvements.
Right. There could be other factors at play.
And the study was only 3 months long, so we don't know about long-term effects.
Okay, good points. So taking all this research into account, what are some expert opinions we can glean about dairy and gut health?
Well, first off, there's definitely a lot of debate around A1 and A2 milk.
It seems like a pretty hot topic.
For sure, and some of that is driven by marketing, no doubt.
Definitely. But what about the actual science?
Well, the general consensus is that both A1 and A2 milk are nutritious.
They both have protein, calcium,
Vitamins?
minerals. So both good options, fundamentally.
Yes. But it's crucial to remember that everyone is different. How we digest dairy and how it affects us can vary a lot from person to person.
Some people might get digestive discomfort from one type of milk, but not the other.
Exactly.
So individual responses matter a lot.
And while some studies, like the one we just discussed, point to potential benefits of A2 milk, we need more research, especially research that directly looks at gut microbiota.
Right. More studies that actually analyze what's happening in our gut.
Exactly. We need randomized controlled trials with diverse populations to get a clearer picture.
And it's also important to remember that dairy isn't just about A1 and A2.
It's part of a bigger picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dairy products can be a source of prebiotics, those things that feed our good gut bacteria.
And probiotics, especially in fermented dairy like yogurt.
Yogurt with live and active cultures, right?
That's the one.
And there are other components in dairy that might be beneficial, like bioactive peptides.
And the milk fat globule membrane, or MFGM.
Which has shown some promise for gut health.
Of course, we can't forget about lactose intolerance.
A big issue for many people.
It can definitely affect digestion and how much dairy people consume, which then impacts their gut microbiota.
Lots to consider here. So, for our listeners, what's the bottom line?
The science around A1 and A2 milk and its effects on gut microbiota is still evolving.
We don't have all the answers yet.
Right, but in the meantime, it's a good idea to pay attention to your own body.
See how you feel after drinking different types of milk or eating other dairy products?
Keep a food journal, maybe, to track your digestion and overall well-being.
Dairy is part of a balanced diet, and it's important to focus on the overall nutritional value of what you eat.
And if you're really interested in supporting your gut health, fermented dairy products like yogurt with live cultures might be a good option.
And whether you choose A1 or A2, remember to consider the fat content, especially saturated fat, for your heart health.
It's all about making informed choices.
If you're interested in learning more, check out the sources we've mentioned or do some research on your own.
Always a good idea to stay informed.
And as always, if you have any concerns about dairy or your gut health, Talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian.
They can provide personalized guidance.
So next time you reach for that glass of milk or yogurt, think about the amazing world inside your gut, the trillions of microorganisms reacting to what you eat. It's a complex ecosystem, and maybe the real deep dive isn't just about A1 versus A2, but about understanding the unique conversation happening within each of us. What other surprising connections might we be missing when it comes to our daily choices and our gut health?
Lots to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.